History is one of those things, you never know where you're going to find it. Sometimes an archaeologist can dig for years to find the smallest of things. Sometimes, on a vessel like this, a family may own it for a while, but with a few scrapes of paint to clean her up, find a big piece of history for our coast. Today, we have Lawrence Charnell with us. He's the gentleman who discovered a bit of history right here in town. So Lawrence, how did your family acquire this boat, and why would they acquire something like this?
Well, Dad was ex-Navy during World War II, and he developed a passion for boating here in the Alberni Inlet. With his friends, they purchased an old fish boat and converted it into a pleasure boat. And then as time progressed, they decided to modernize and found the Nahanni for sale here in Port Alberni. We purchased it in about 1970. And over the course of time, I had more of an interest in it. And when Dad decided he couldn't maintain it anymore, then he passed it on to me in around 1990. We always knew it had been ex-armed forces vessel of some type, figuring that it was ex-Air Force, but didn't know where it had been stationed or what its purpose was. And with the advent of the internet, I started doing research on it and ran into a lot of dead ends. There was virtually no information through Canadian military or anything like that on these types of craft. They talked about some of the stations where the seaplanes were stationed during the war, but not anything about the boats. And finally, I stumbled on a British website, and it just opened up an encyclopedia of information about these boats as they were used in Britain. And as it went along, it talked about some of them being sent to Canada at the start of the war for trials, and then the trials were proven, they sent more boats, and then some of them were built in Canada, on the east coast of Canada and on the west coast. And then a little bit of research, some lucky stumbling, I found the official number listed in a Lloyd's registry of ships, and that led me to the more information on where it may have been stationed. And it sounded like it was stationed on the west coast, and it had been owned by a consortium, a variety of people in Victoria, and then came into possession of a local logger, Al Levine, and he had it for a crew boat, and then it was sold to another couple in town, Orrin Hubert. He was one of the owners, and that's who my dad purchased it from. Later on, more research led me to a radio operator's website that listed all the radio call signs of the RCAF Marine Unit boats. And after scrolling through 25, 30 pages of this and not having any luck, I finally found the boat number. And it told me then that it was built in 1941, had been stationed in Ucluelet for the duration of the war, and then after the war, it was sold off through Crown Assets Disposal. So you could extrapolate that it went from Crown Assets Disposal to a shipyard in Victoria, Wilby Marine, where it was converted to a single diesel from twin gas engines, and then And then it was registered privately as a yacht and then sold to Al Levine back here in Port Alberni. So the vessel had really never been away from Barkley Sound for that long during its life. And so now here it is 47 years later, and we're finally retiring it.
So how did you manage to actually find the numbers on the boat? What were you doing to...
The paint was starting to get so thick that it wouldn't stick anymore. So in the summertime, I decided, well, I'm going to take the paint down and fair the hull up a little bit. And once I had the paint removed from the bow, I found all its original pennant numbers and the Air Force rondelle. So that got me pretty excited. And so now I had the official number of the boat, and I had its pennant number, so then I could jump into any of the archives that I was able to find, click with those numbers, and so that's when most of the information came up.
So what's it like to actually find a piece of history, and this is possibly the last boat of its kind?
Well, I was pretty excited. Coupled with some of the information that came out of England regarding these boats, and the fact that Lawrence of Arabia, where he had been returned from Egypt to England and was put into skunk works in the Air Force to develop the original rapid rescue launches. So this is a continuation of his work and an extension of that into Canada. So I was pretty excited with that. And
you've done quite a bit of research on this, haven't you?
Over time, it's a little bit's come up. You know, I've researched the Ucluelet seaplane base, and Cole Harbour had a similar base. Looking at similarities, and I've had a chance to visit both of them, and talking to some of the locals, trying to find a little bit more. As far as how many of these boats are left, I was cruising in Nootka Sound one time, back in late 70s, early 80s, and there was another one of the boats cruising there. He was going north, I was going south, and we couldn't make contact. Talking with some of the old-time locals up there later on, they said, yeah, that's a shame. That boat was a great one. But it ended up on the beach one day and rolled over, and the stove caught fire, and the boat was burned and lost.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to donate the boat?
Well, I was running out of time to keep the maintenance up. And then we had a little bit of an incident in the summer where the boat tried to sink on me. The summer had been so hot and dry that the planks had shrank. And normally I can keep up with it with the pumps and let them take up. But for whatever reason, it got away on me this time. And so I ended up having to put it on the beach. And then the Coast Guard came and helped me pump it up and refloat it and get it back to town. But through the sinking there, the engine had gone underwater, all the electronics had gone underwater, so it was just way too much more work than I wanted to attempt at this stage of my life. So I contemplated having a big bonfire out in my brother-in-law's field, but I didn't think that was a fitting end, so I approached the society, and thankfully they jumped all over it.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah. And thank you for dropping by and sharing the information with us.
Well, thanks.
It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thanks for asking me down. It's been a great day.
Okay, thank you. At the start of World War II, the RCAF Navy basically had an assortment of vessels, anything from rowboats to ex-fishing boats, ex-rum runners, ex-RCMP boats. And the crews, well, that was basically the same. There was quite an assortment. ex-fishermen, ex-rum runners, ex-RCMP officers. And according to a report in the 1940s, the ex-rum runners and ex-RCMP officers didn't always see eye to eye. There were men like Nels Jackson Nelson, who had been a fisherman and freighter along this coast since 1910. He joined the RCN at the start of the war and was later transferred to the RCAF. But he came on a condition. When he brings his boat, he leaves with his boat. And sure enough, at the end of the war, he left with his boat. This particular boat was built at the A.C. Benson Yards in 1940, basically for service here in Ucluelet. It had twin gas engines that could give it over 40 knots of speed. And those engines would sit right under that floor pan right there. Being only about 40 feet long and made out of wood, she could be a bit of a scary thing just to be on when you know you're in enemy waters. Anything could surface and take a shot at you. I'm here with Ken Whiteman of the Maritime Heritage Society, and he's going to help fill us in a little bit on the Pelican. Ken, how did you find out about the Pelican?
Pelican came to our attention by Lawrence Charnell. He had it sitting down at Fisherman's Wharf here. It was still above water, but we could tell that it was getting pretty bleak looking. So we talked to Lawrence, and Lawrence said he'd like to donate it to our society. So I brought it back to the board, and we took a look at it. You know, what can we do with a 1941 World War II crash boat? And then the board said, yeah, it's an interesting boat. Let's take it on. And so we talked again with Lawrence, and we had Bob Vandermeulen, he brought his boat down to Fisherman's Wharf, and we tied it up to the Pelican, which is now the Nahanni, and we motored it up to Clutha Marina. Got a trailer, got it taken out, and then brought it back to our compound here and took all the fencing down so we could get the boat into the compound. It was the only way we could do it. And so we managed to get it in there, got a crib built under it. And since that time, that was back in November of 2018. And since that time, we've gutted the cabin. Lawrence had built another cabin on it. So we took all that stuff off. And now we're just waiting to get some plans. And getting plans for these boats is not easy. So we've been trying now for 2 years. We've now got a contact over in England that's looking at some plans for us. And he sent me some stuff. I showed it to Lawrence, and he said, yeah, he thinks he can take the plans that we got and build them into a schematic so we can get working on the boat again. Now, if you take a look at the boat has been in the sun out of water for about almost 2 years now. And so the planks, the cracks between the planks are getting pretty big. So when I talked to the surveyor, Don Camara, he indicated that what we should do is get Porter's cement and re-cement all those cracks and then repaint it. And, we're going to take the engine out. We're going to do a bunch of other things with it to get it back to the original state. But the trick is to make sure we have the planning so we can bring it back to life in a fashion that it's the same as what it was back in 1941. We won't have any engines in it, but it will be an opportunity for people, from the Air Force and the Army and whatever, to come and take a look at an old boat that's, well, how old is it now? 70 years old, 70, 80 years old. So bring it back to life in some capacity.
Now, there's quite a bit to restoring a boat such as that.
Oh, there is quite a bit. Just getting volunteers that want to work on it is a major problem. But we've got a committed board, and we're going to start working on it again this year. As you can see out in our compound, we have a huge totem pole that's out there, and we're just waiting for our First Nations carvers and that to finish up the pole and we get that out of the way so we can bring in what they call the moose, which is like a high-up crane, so we can pull the motor out of the Nahani. We have to get close enough to the boat that it's that the moose can do that. So we're working. You know, we've got a lot of balls in the air, and it's just hopefully over the next 6 months we can get a lot of this stuff done.
Well, that's good. What kind of significance is it to have a boat like this in our?
I think the significance of it is that if you were living in Port Alberni in the 1940s, there was no roads out to Ukilit. Everything took place down the harbor there, down the inlet, or from the Wanapeka Straits or whatever. So from my research, it indicated that the Japanese were planning on coming up the inlet, taking Port Alberni, which would give them access to Vancouver. And that's when Pearl Harbor happened. What, in 1941, December 14th, I believe.
December 7th, yes.
Yeah, right. And so their plans were to do that. And so what they did is they, here again, nasty to think about now, but all the Japanese boats were all taken by the Canadian government. The Japanese were interned in other places. And so there was a definite concern about the Japanese invading Vancouver Island in an attempt to get it to Vancouver and the mainland.
But this is, I believe, the last of its kind on this coast.
I understand it's the last of its kind.
So this must be quite a score for the museum here to have the one and only.
Yeah, right, one and only. I guess it is. I guess it isn't, in the sense that it's definitely an old boat. It's been beat up pretty badly. We're going to do our best to make it lookable again, if you wish, so people want to come and take a look at it and take a look at some history back to 1940.
That's quite good. How long do you figure it might take to finish it from when you can get started on it?
Well, our plan is to finish the boat and build a shelter over it like we built over the Swan. So here again, we have, thanks to the regional district, they gave us $5,000 bucks in which to help renovate the boat, but we need another $25,000 to build a shelter over it. So we're probably talking a couple more years before we can get it all done.
Okay. And then this boat has kind of an interesting connection to a warrior from the Middle East.
Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia. T.S. Shaw was his name back then. He'd done a lot of things over in Egypt and whatever, and then he ended up back in England, and he was a bit of a scary fellow at times. They didn't know where he was going, what he was going to do, but he had lots and lots of skills. And so he was the one that developed the 200 series crash boats. And this one here is the Nahani, Pelican 264, is based on his plans back in 1939, I believe.
That's quite an interesting piece of history.
Yeah, right. So we're going to do up some storyboards so the general public can take a look at where the history is in this boat. I've been in touch with the Crash Boat Society over in England, and they're sending me some other stuff on like those different sizes. This one here is a 37.5-foot crash boat, but they also had some 60-footers, some 70-footers. But our interest lies in the 37.5-foot.
And I believe the smaller boats, 40 feet and under, were named after seabirds.
They were named after seabirds. They were, and some of them were named after flowers higher up. But yeah, they had all sorts of the heron. I think they had one called the duck. They had the pelican. They had a lot of different seabirds. The heron. They had a lot of them. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ken, for stopping by and enlightening us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
History is a real treasure, and it does take a lot of work to preserve it. Members here at the Maritime Heritage Society put a lot into this. And if you'd like to come down and lend a hand financially or with a hammer, feel free. They're always looking for help. I'm Gerald Labute, your friendly neighborhood time traveler. And I'll see you next time, whenever in time that may be.